rise of the Knights Templar and the mystical legacy of Kabbalah. In July 1099, the city of Jerusalem fell to the Crusader armies, marking a violent end to Muslim control. In the days that followed, the Crusaders unleashed a brutal massacre, killing nearly 70,000 Muslims and Jews and defiling sacred sites in the process. Following this bloody conquest, the Crusaders established the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, a Christian stronghold in the Holy Land. With Jerusalem under Christian rule, pilgrimages surged as believers from across Europe flocked to the sacred city. By 1118, a French knight named Hugues de Payens, along with 8 companions, approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem with a request to form a religious military order dedicated to protecting Christian pilgrims from the dangers that plagued the region. The king agreed, and they became known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. History, however, would remember them by a simpler and more iconic name: the Knights Templar. King Baldwin allowed them to set up their base on the Temple Mount, believed to be the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. Although they began as a modest group of warrior monks living in poverty, the Templars rapidly expanded, gaining wealth, power, and official recognition from the church. Over time, they became infamous for their military ruthlessness, especially toward Muslim populations during the Crusades. Yet, some believe their presence on the Temple Mount was no coincidence. While the Templars claimed their mission was to safeguard Christian travelers, many argue that their true motive lay beneath the surface, literally. The order began to excavate secret tunnels under the Temple Mount, searching for ancient relics, treasures, and scrolls buried within the ruins of Solomon's temple. Eventually, they are said to have uncovered a collection of mystical manuscripts, documents that would later become tied to the origins of what is known today as Kabbalah. According to Islamic tradition, Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, was granted by Allah the power to command the jinn. These supernatural beings were placed in his service and assigned monumental tasks, including the construction of the Great Temple. After Solomon's death, however, corruption spread. The devils deceived the people, hiding books of dark magic beneath Solomon's throne and falsely claiming that Solomon had ruled through sorcery. Many were misled and began practicing forbidden magic, even accusing Solomon of being a sorcerer himself. The Quran firmly refutes this slander, declaring that it was the devils who taught magic, not Prophet Solomon. Centuries later, it is believed that the Knights Templar unearthed these very manuscripts, linking their contents to early Jewish mystical teachings, the foundations of Kabbalah. The word Kabbalah, from the Hebrew Kabbalah, meaning receiving or tradition, refers to a body of esoteric teachings passed down through generations. According to Jewish tradition, this mystical knowledge was revealed to Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, at Mount Sinai and preserved among select scholars and mystics. However, many argue that Kabbalah is less divine tradition and more occult doctrine, a blend of mysticism, magic, and hidden knowledge. Its texts often blur the line between symbolic spirituality and dangerous, cryptic practices, making it difficult to discern the harmless from the harmful. The first known Kabbalistic text, the Sefer HaBahir, Book of Brightness, appeared around 1176, during the same era as the Templars' rise. The most renowned work, however, is the Zohar, Book of Splendor, a profound mystical commentary on the Torah that emerged in the 13th century. Later, in the 16th century, Rabbi Isaac Luria developed Lurianic Kabbalah during the Ottoman Empire, shaping Kabbalah's modern form. At the same time, unsettling events were unfolding, particularly in Prague, during the late 1500s under Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire. The Jewish community faced severe persecution, false accusations like the infamous blood libel, and frequent attacks. In response, the revered scholar and mystic Rabbi Judah Lo ben Bezalel, also known as the Maharal of Prague, sought a divine solution. According to legend, he had a vision instructing him to create a protector, a golem, a creature molded from clay and brought to life through sacred Kabbalistic rituals. Inspired by the Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Creation, which describes how God created the universe using Hebrew letters and divine formulas, Rabbi Lo believed he could harness the same cosmic forces. Kabbalistic tradition speaks of 10 divine utterances through which all creation came to be, each being a unique configuration of spiritual energy embedded in letters. One night, Rabbi Lo and his closest disciples gathered clay from the banks of the Vltava River and shaped it into a giant humanoid figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Using Kabbalistic incantations, he inscribed the word Emet, truth, on its forehead and placed a sacred parchment containing God's name in its mouth. The golem stirred to life, silent but immensely powerful. The golem became a guardian of the Jewish quarter, defending against attacks and performing tasks for the community. Most notably, it is said to have foiled a blood libel plot when it exposed an attempt to frame the Jews by planting a child's body in their midst. As time passed, however, the golem's strength grew unstable. Though created to protect, it eventually became too powerful to control, leading Rabbi Lo to deactivate it. In some versions of the legend, the word Emet was altered to Met, death, by erasing the first letter, ending the golem's existence. The golem's rampage and the dangerous power of practical Kabbalah. In some versions of the golem legend, Rabbi Lo forgot to deactivate the creature before the Sabbath. What followed was chaos. The golem, once a silent guardian, spiraled out of control, damaging property and terrifying the very people it was meant to protect. Realizing the immense danger, Rabbi Lo confronted the golem. On its forehead was the word Emet, meaning truth. He carefully erased the first letter, leaving Met, Hebrew for death. At once, the golem collapsed into lifeless clay. Rabbi Lo ordered the remains to be hidden away in the attic of the Old New Synagogue, Alt-Nuskal, in Prague. According to legend, it still lies there today, waiting, silent, and dormant. But the legend of the golem isn't the only tale of man shaping life through divine knowledge. The Talmud itself records accounts of Jewish sages creating living beings using the mystical teachings of the Sefer Yetzirah, an early Kabbalistic text that explores the secrets of creation through Hebrew letters and sacred formulas. One striking example describes the sage Rava, who used this mystical knowledge to form a man. He sent the being to another scholar, Rabbi Zira, who quickly realized the figure was not human. When it didn't respond to speech, Rabbi Zira declared, "You are a creation of the sages, return to dust." The being instantly disintegrated. Another story tells of 2 rabbis who, every Friday before the Sabbath, would study Sefer Yetzirah together. Their learning would result in the spontaneous creation of fattened calves, which they would then eat. These are examples of practical Kabbalah, a mystical tradition that doesn't just contemplate divine truths, but seeks to alter physical reality. Practical Kabbalah, between divine power and dark magic. At the heart of practical Kabbalah lies the Shem HaMefarash, the explicit name of God, a sacred formula composed of hidden letter combinations. In Jewish mystical tradition, even angels are said to obey these divine names. With precise rituals and proper spiritual alignment, practitioners believed they could heal the sick, banish evil, or summon spiritual entities. But this power came at a great cost. A single mispronunciation, a single impure thought, could open the door to dangerous and malevolent forces. One of the most infamous texts associated with practical Kabbalah is the Sefer Harazim, the Book of Mysteries. It describes rituals to contact celestial beings, summon spiritual armies, and commune with entities between worlds. The book outlines layered heavens, astrological timings, and incense offerings, combined with intricate diagrams and chants. But many of its rites border dangerously on demonology. By the Middle Ages, a group of secretive mystics known as the Balei Shem, masters of the name, began to appear across Europe. These wandering rabbis claimed to perform miraculous healings, lift curses, and confront evil spirits. To ordinary people, they were holy men. To others, they were sorcerers playing with fire. A cautionary tale, the fall of Joseph della Reina. Even among the Balei Shem, some went too far. In the 15th century, a mystic named Joseph della Reina believed he could bring about the coming of the Messiah. Convinced he could bind Satan himself, Joseph and his disciples retreated into the wilderness and began a series of intense rituals. They drew magical circles, burned incense, and invoked secret divine names night after night. Eventually, something answered. When Satan appeared, Joseph tried to command him using holy words, but the ritual failed. Some say it was pride that corrupted the ritual. Others believe Satan simply outwitted him. In desperation, Joseph turned to forbidden spirits, offering sacrifices in exchange for aid. Within days, his mind shattered. He wandered the forests alone, raving, until he disappeared without a trace. Kabbalistic writings state that he fell into the hands of the other side and never returned. Symbols, geometry, and the magic of the unseen. To deny that Kabbalah is a form of magic is to ignore its own language. It is a technology of the unseen, a system of signs, symbols, numbers, and names designed to access realms beyond the physical. Shapes like circles, squares, the Star of David, the eye in the hand, the serpent, and Metatron's cube are not mere decorations. They are considered spiritual devices, tools for channeling energy or invoking hidden realities. When used in conjunction with gematria, Jewish numerology, these symbols become keys to bending reality. In this way, Kabbalah shares unsettling parallels with the Islamic grimoire Shams al-Ma'arif, a book widely condemned for its explicit instructions on summoning jinn. Both traditions use geometry, secret names, and coded diagrams to communicate with entities beyond the veil. But these rituals do not call upon angels. They summon something else. The other side, the Tree of Death. Most people associate Kabbalah with the Tree of Life, a sacred diagram made of 10 sephirot, representing divine attributes. It is considered a blueprint of creation and a spiritual ladder toward enlightenment. Similarities can be found with Sufi cosmology, where ascending spiritual states lead to closeness with the divine. However, hidden behind this sacred map is its dark twin, the Sitra Akra, literally, the other side. This is the shadow realm that mirrors the divine order. For every Sephira on the Tree of Life, there is a twisted counterpart on the Tree of Death, inhabited by the Cliffith, the husks or remnants of impure spiritual energy. The Zohar warns, "He who gazes into the husks will be consumed by their gaze." Medieval accounts tell of mystics who dared to traverse this shadow realm. In 15th century Spain, a mystic known as Abraham of Granada performed forbidden rites in pursuit of Qliphothic knowledge. Neighbors claimed to hear strange howling winds, footsteps on ceilings, and murmured voices coming from his home. On the third night, he was found unconscious, his body covered in geometric burn marks forming the inverted Tree of Life. He never spoke again, only repeated one phrase, "It watches back." By the 19th and 20th centuries, the Cliffith and the Tree of Death became a central obsession for Western occultists. What began as mystical pursuit transformed into dangerous experimentation with spiritual forces far beyond human comprehension. Kabbalah, once seen as divine wisdom, had shown its two faces, one of light, the other of shadow. Alister Crowley and the Descent into the Husk Realms. Among the most notorious figures to explore the shadowy realms of Kabbalistic mysticism was Alister Crowley, a man dubbed the wickedest man in the world. Crowley's writings not only referenced the Cliffith, the husks or shells of chaotic spiritual intelligences, but described descending into them to confront and command these entities. As the leader of the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, Crowley presided over rituals that involved sexual rites, bloodletting, and the distortion of divine names. He believed these acts could pierce the veil between worlds and open gateways to pre-human intelligences, beings he described as cold, alien, and predatory. One OTO member documented a ritual in Cairo, 1904, during which shadows gathered along the walls, though no light cast them. The air thickened. Then, a voice, not spoken but felt within the skull, whispered, "You opened it. Now feed it." Rather than fading, these interpretations of Kabbalah's darker side found renewed life in modern esotericism. By the late 20th century, the rise of Qliphothic magic was marked by symbols of inversion, upside-down trees of life, blackened sephirot diagrams, and arcane sigils summoning the long-dreaded husks. Crowley's rituals and the Cairo revelation. Crowley was unlike mystics before him. He didn't revere Kabbalah, he weaponized it. His obsession reached its peak in 1904 during a fateful trip to Cairo, Egypt. There, he and his wife Rose conducted ritual after ritual, blending Jewish Kabbalistic invocations with Egyptian magic. During one trance, Rose claimed to see Horus, the Egyptian god of war, staring at her from an unseen dimension. On April 10th, Crowley claimed an invisible being named Aiwass dictated to him the Book of the Law, a text he declared the foundation of a new religion. Thelema, centered on the phrase, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Crowley later used Gematria, the Kabbalistic numerological system, to analyze the book. He argued it contained hidden codes connected to the Tree of Life, suggesting Aiwass was a spiritual emissary of Harpocrates, blending Kabbalah and Egyptian deities into a syncretic mysticism. Sexual magic, sigils, and shadow entities. Back in Europe, Crowley developed what he called sexual magic, combining acts of intimacy with sacred geometry and sigils drawn directly from Kabbalistic systems. He believed these rituals could generate spiritual energy strong enough to tear open rifts between worlds. His followers reported disturbing phenomena during these rites. Unseen figures watching, sudden chills, and whispers in languages no one recognized. In one 1911 ritual in Paris, Crowley allegedly used a fusion of Kabbalistic and Egyptian rituals to summon an astral intelligence. Witnesses claimed he became paralyzed. His voice shifted unnaturally, and he began speaking in an unknown tongue. Hours later, he collapsed, soaked in sweat, and claimed he had crossed the abyss and made contact with a Qliphothic being. The Abbey of Thelema and the Abyss. Crowley's experiments weren't limited to private chambers. At the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily, he painted Kabbalistic symbols on the walls and performed ceremonies involving intoxication, sex rites, and invocation of spirits. Locals spoke of unearthly lights emerging from the abbey and the sensation of being watched, even from a distance. One follower, Raoul Loveday, died shortly after participating in a ritual involving a mysterious elixir Crowley claimed could unbind the soul. Even Crowley admitted that not all rituals were safe. In one harrowing account, he attempted a Kabbalistic ritual to summon a spirit of the Qliphothic realm of obstruction. Mid-ritual, he lost control. Objects levitated. His vision fractured into kaleidoscopic shards, and an oppressive, formless presence overwhelmed him. He wrote, "I felt the floor vanish beneath me. I wasn't falling through space, but through the very fabric of existence, into something not meant to be seen." Whether all of Crowley's accounts are fact or fiction, one truth remains. He embraced the darkest edges of Kabbalah, using it not as a path to God, but as a gateway to the other side. The Zohar, splendor or shadow. Throughout these tales, the name Zohar has surfaced time and again. But what is it, truly? In Jewish mysticism, the Torah is not merely read, it is decoded. Beneath its words lie deeper truths, understood through a system known as parts, an acronym for 4 levels of interpretation. 1. Peshet, the simple, literal meaning. 2. Remez, the allegorical or symbolic reading. 3. Darash, interpretative insights, drawn through midrash and parables. 4. Sod, the secret, mystical meaning hidden within the text. Together, these levels form parts, meaning orchard, a metaphor for a paradise of hidden knowledge. But Kabbalists issue a warning. Entering this orchard is dangerous. The Talmud recounts how 4 rabbis entered parts. 1 died, 1 went mad, 1 became a heretic. Only Rabbi Akiva entered and returned in peace. The story stands as a stark reminder. To explore the Sod, the secrets, is to risk exposure to forbidden realms, especially the Qliphothic, the corrupt inversions of divine truth. Zohar, the heart of Kabbalah. The Zohar, meaning splendor, is the foundational text of Kabbalah. Attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, though likely compiled in medieval Spain, the Zohar presents the mystical commentary on the Torah, revealing the hidden architecture of reality. It teaches that the Torah is encoded with divine energies, that each letter and number is a spiritual mechanism, and that the soul's journey is deeply tied to the cosmic blueprint known as the Tree of Life. Yet even the Zohar acknowledges the other side, the Qliphothic, the Tree of Death, and the forces of chaos that oppose divine order. It warns that those who seek divine power without purity will fall into spiritual ruin. Unlike straightforward readings of the Torah, the Zohar navigates effortlessly through all layers of pards, the 4 levels of scriptural interpretation. According to the Zohar, every human bears spiritual imprints on their body, lines on the forehead, facial features, and markings on the hands, all reflecting the soul's history, moral character, and divine purpose. Those who master this ancient wisdom are said to perceive a person's essence without the need for words. The Zohar's mystical form of physiognomy teaches that the face is an open book, revealing one's inner nature. Sages could allegedly detect qualities such as wisdom, deceit, humility, anger, or compassion simply by observing a person's facial structure and expression. The forehead, in particular, is believed to carry spiritual symbols, letters visible not with physical eyes but through mystical perception. One story tells of a Kabbalist in medieval Spain who traveled from village to village resolving disputes by reading faces. In one case, 2 merchants accused each other of theft. The Kabbalist examined their foreheads and pronounced one guilty. When asked for evidence, he explained that he saw letters of shadow across the man's forehead, symbols of deceit. The Zohar also places great emphasis on the hands. It teaches that the lines and shapes of the hands form a kind of spiritual map. Each finger corresponds to a cosmic force, and the primary lines, what later traditions call the lifeline, wisdom line, and fate line, are believed to reflect vitality, intellect, and destiny. Unlike modern palmistry, however, the Zohar links these lines directly to Hebrew letters and divine principles. Another passage describes a sage who examined a young man's hand and foresaw imminent danger. A broken line intersecting another sharply warned of a coming trial. The sage advised the man to give charity and immerse himself in Torah study. Months later, the man narrowly survived a violent attack and became convinced that the sage's warning and his subsequent spiritual actions had saved his life. A parallel event appears in Islamic tradition. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was about 12 years old, he traveled to Syria with his uncle Abu Talib. There they encountered a Christian monk named Bahira. Upon seeing the young prophet, Bahira studied his face and asked probing questions. He seemed to know details about the boy's life, including the death of his father. Bahira recognized him as the final prophet foretold in earlier scriptures. Fearing that others would also recognize him, Bahira warned Abu Talib to return with the child to Mecca. It's possible that Bahira possessed some form of mystical insight, perhaps akin to the face reading described in the Zohar, that revealed the child's true identity. The darker side of Kabbalah traces its roots to ancient forbidden texts, said to have been authored by demonic entities and hidden beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple. Centuries later, during the Crusades, the Knights Templar allegedly discovered these writings. This discovery, it is said, marked the rebirth of one of history's most secretive and esoteric magical traditions. When the great Muslim leader Salah ad-Din, Saladin, recaptured Jerusalem from the Crusaders in 1187, he forgave many Christians, but not the Knights Templar. Their infamous cruelty and implacable hostility made them unworthy of mercy, and many were executed. However, some Templars managed to escape and fled Jerusalem. Although defeated in the Holy Land, the Templars re-established themselves in Europe, especially in France, where they amassed enormous wealth, power, and political influence. Their independence eventually made them a threat to kings and rulers. The order became notorious for its secrecy and was rumored to perform dark, arcane rituals. In 1307, under the orders of King Philip IV of France and with the blessing of Pope Clement V, the Knights Templar were arrested and their order disbanded. Many were tortured into confessing to grave accusations: heresy, sorcery, idolatry, and moral corruption. Some claimed that during their initiation rituals, they were made to renounce Christ, desecrate the crucifix, and perform acts meant to test obedience. Others hinted at the possession of secret teachings and hidden knowledge. While the official power of the Templars was broken, some members escaped persecution. A number found refuge in Scotland under King Robert the Bruce, one of the few European rulers beyond papal authority. There, the surviving Templars reorganized in secrecy. To hide their identity and maintain influence, they integrated into the guilds of skilled stonemasons, some of the most respected civil associations of the time. Gradually, they gained control over these guilds, which evolved into what we now know as Freemasonry. In their book, The Hiram Key, British Freemasons Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas argue that Freemasonry's true origins lie in the legacy of the Knights Templar. They suggest that the Templars' real mission was not merely to protect pilgrims, but to excavate the ruins of Solomon's Temple, and that they succeeded. What they unearthed was the mystical tradition later known as the Jewish Kabbalah. This secret knowledge, they claim, became the foundation of the Templars' vast power and influence. The Templars were the first European bankers, wielding immense political clout. Over time, the esoteric wisdom they discovered served as the cornerstone for later secret societies like Freemasonry. At the heart of these traditions lies a mystical current, rooted in the Kabbalah, that continues to shape powerful networks to this day.